We have a shocking Toronto Maple Leafs trade update as a brand new report has dropped revealing some very interesting details surrounding the Toronto Maple Leafs trade plans. We're going to break down exactly what that report entails and discuss who the Leafs are shopping according to this report, as who they are shopping is going to shock you. Stay tuned for all that in this episode, but before we get into it, we are proud to announce that this video is brought to you by Rentals.ca, who are proud supporters of Team Canada. And while they've been supporting our national team defend their home court at international competition, they've also been helping thousands of Canadians find their home floor all across the country. It doesn't matter whether you're in Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, Calgary, Halifax, Winnipeg, Mississauga, Edmonton, Victoria, St. John's. It doesn't matter, from coast to coast. Rentals.ca has a ton of options to find the perfect place and price for you.
Their website is clean and easy to use, and you can pinpoint exactly on the map where you want to move, finding all the options in your area. Find your home court with rentals.ca.
Yeah, check out the link in the pinned comment as well as the description down below. And thank you to Rentals.ca once again for supporting us, supporting you guys in finding the best options and best rentals all across the country. And also shout out to them for supporting Team Canada. But Darius, we have a lot to go over today and talking about some interesting things here. And obviously, some reports have dropped. A very interesting report has dropped surrounding the Leafs goaltending. And it's very intriguing to me. I didn't expect to wake up to this. It's kind of making its rounds around Twitter and all these different things. And, well, let's just dive right into it. It's time for the Maple Leafs fans to drop the apathetic attitude towards the regular season. Reasons why, my latest Star Sports article. So, an interesting headline there for an article, but it is what it is. You move on to the actual article, and Nick Kypreos says, lots of teams are eyeing the Leafs depth in net beyond the tandem of Anthony Stolarz and Joseph Woll. Odds are Toronto will move one of them before the trade deadline ends. Or before the trade deadline, sorry. So, I just want to get your thoughts on this. We both know how good both the goalies have been, and according to Nick Kypreos here, and he's pretty tuned in, whether you like him or hate him, it seems like the Leafs are at least leaning towards moving off of one of their star goaltenders this season. Debatably, if you want to call Joseph Woll star, that's up to you, but one of their two goaltenders this season.
Yeah, I don't know if that happens. And also, I appreciate what Nick Kypreos does, but I think in this situation, I'm not sure if fans are actually apathetic this season. Like, I personally am having the most fun watching games I have in the last 2 or 3 years. So there has been a bit of a shift in that, at least. But again, we are all waiting for the playoffs, of course. But yeah, in terms of trading one of the goaltenders, it doesn't make sense to me, especially the NHL goaltenders, Joseph Woll and Anthony Stolarz. To do that would make no sense to me. They are the best tandem right now in the NHL, I believe, besides maybe the Winnipeg Jets at this point. But as a real tandem where both guys are playing almost an even amount of games, I think they're the best in the NHL right now and the most cost effective as well. They barely make any money against the salary cap. So to trade one of them would make no sense. Now, if the Leafs want to kind of dip into the depth a little bit, maybe move somebody who's a little bit younger, because they got a bit of a backlog right now. They have a lot of prospects, which is crazy to think. Again, we talked about it the other day. Just the fact that the Leafs have so many great goaltenders right now in the system and on the team is unbelievable after the last couple of years. But I think that maybe they can kind of dip their toe into the depth a little bit, see what people, around the league are saying. If they want maybe a younger goaltender who has, a lot of promise. I wouldn't trade Akhtiamov right now. I think he's probably going to be the guy moving forward, or he's looking that way. But I certainly wouldn't trade Joseph or Anthony Stolarz at this point. You never know if one of them gets injured in the playoffs. We saw it last year. If you had Anthony Stolarz and maybe he got hurt, then you have Joseph Woll. I think that's better than having to put Samsonov back in net for a game seven. So I wouldn't move off of either of these guys.
Yeah, I think the reason that they might be considering it is some of the depth that you mentioned. And again, Stolarz, career year so far. Joseph Woll having a very solid start. He is on his in the first year of his 3-year deal, so maybe I can't see them moving off of Woll considering they just signed him. So maybe this is more of a Stolarz thing. It says if they're in a strong position to win the Atlantic by March, it's unlikely they'll have to give up prize assets like Easton Cowan, Fraser Minton, and Dennis Hildeby. However, with Mitch Marner being unrestricted free agent, they may not have any untouchable players to make one last ditch effort to win the Stanley Cup. And lots of teams are eyeing the Leafs' depth in net beyond the tandem of them. And again, they will move one of them before the deadline. Odds are, at least. And I don't love this, like you mentioned. I think it makes a little bit of sense, though, when you think about it from an asset management point of view. You have Stolarz having a great year. If they don't think that either A, Stolarz can keep it up, or B, is going to be able to keep this up into next season, they do have him on one more year in his deal, after this. I think on that 1 year, they have one more year. This would be the time to trade him if you're going to trade him. I don't think it's a great idea. I think the team is rolling right now as is. But if you get overwhelmed by an offer, there are a lot of teams that could use a goaltender of this caliber. Maybe they would move off of a guy like Anthony Stolarz. So I really hope they don't, because he is obviously one of my favorite players on the Leafs this season. But I think you mentioned the depth. I think that might be one of the reasons why they potentially move off of him. I mean, you look into next season, if they think any of these guys are going to be ready for next season, whether that is, like Tiamov, Matt Murray, or Dennis Hildeby here. Again, Matt Murray is more of a veteran. He's putting up a sneaky good season as well. So if they think Matt Murray can if they think one of these guys can take over the primary spot and they can get a haul back for Anthony Stolarz or Joseph Woll, because goalies never go on the trade deadline, or very rarely go on the market at the trade deadline.
Yeah.
Maybe it would be good asset management, although I wouldn't be super fast to do it. But they have three really good goalies on the Marlies, and they're all kind of taking up and chomping at each other's playing time here. So I could see a real world where they maybe move off of Joseph Woll even, and then get Matt Murray as the backup, who, honestly, depending how he does in the NHL, I could see him being a solid backup for one of these guys.
Well, listen, if the market's booming around the trade deadline and there's a lot of teams in play for a goalie and maybe they're, fringe playoff teams and they really think that, a decent goalie would put them over the top. Right now, I think I would trade Joseph Woll because his deal hasn't kicked in yet, I believe, that they just signed. And obviously, he's going to be making more than Anthony Stolarz. Anthony Stolarz is older. He has more experience. He's won a Stanley Cup. I'd rather him at this point in time, especially in this cup window. So I would trade Joseph Woll because you do have younger goaltenders who are coming up, like Dennis Hildeby, who show some promise. Akhtiamov as well. I was not familiar with your game. This guy looks like he's going to be the real deal. Like his statistics in the AHL this year are unbelievable. Just brilliant. But he looks like he's going to be the guy. And then you have Matt Murray as well, who could potentially back up going into the playoffs, right? Who looks like, quietly, like you said as well, he's also putting together a pretty good season this year. And he said he's feeling the best even since before his Pittsburgh days. He's feeling better now since he had the hip surgery. So, and say what you want about it. Yes, maybe he's not exactly the same player, but he said he's feeling better. And obviously when you're dealing with injury and you're in pain all the time, it is a factor in your play. So I could see a world where, again, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't trade one of these guys because you never know what happens come playoffs. And you never know what happens with injuries, and they're both playing well. But I think if I were to trade one at this point in time, I think it's Joseph Woll because you have more money locked up with him longer term. And it looks like you have a couple guys who are showing real promise. And Akhtiamov and Hildeby are not as young as people think. They're 2001 borns. They're already 23, 24 years old. So they're going to be making their way to the NHL shortly. They just need a couple, maybe a year or two to kind of marinate in the AHL.
Yeah, I mean, one of those guys are going to need to play in the NHL soon. And if you have Stolarz locked up next year and you have Woll locked up for, I guess, 3 more years after this season, I don't know where. And maybe they signed Joseph Woll to a 3-year deal knowing they were going to sign Stolarz in case they wanted to move off one of them and the asset would still be there. And I don't know. It's a very interesting conversation to have. But, I mean, Nick Kypreos, he says that one of them are most likely to be moved before the deadline. So I'm curious to see who that is. I think I'm with you. I think it's probably Joseph Woll, although it's weird to me. Again, they signed Liljegren to a 2-year extension and traded him, actually, so it couldn't. It could easily happen with Joseph Woll, depending on what's going on. Stolarz, I think, is the better goaltender at this point of their careers with more experience. I trust him more in a playoff game, even though he had one bad play, only one game in the playoffs last year for the Panthers, and it wasn't very good. But let us know what your thoughts are on that. And we also have an update on David Jiricek here, who's seemingly going to be traded any day now. Now, whether that's to the Leafs or not is still up in the air. I think there's some other favorites at this point. But do you have any thoughts on David Jiricek potential trade to the Toronto Maple Leafs and what has been a busy day? The earliest trade chatter we've had in years for surrounding the NHL and surrounding the Leafs as well.
Well, I'd kick tires on it because the Columbus Blue Jackets have kind of changed their criteria for what they want in return for him. So I would kick tires on it because he is a very young defenseman that hasn't worked out so far in Columbus, and he has a really high ceiling. So I would at least kick tires on it. But also in this article, there's other, the Leafs are kind of kicking tires on other centers as well. And we're going to get to that in another video, but they're definitely in play right now. They're definitely working the phones. Brad Living is in office and he is working the phones.
Yeah, trades are going down and probably will happen soon. Quick note, McMahon is day-to-day at this moment. Who knows what happens with him? Hopefully he isn't out for a long period of time because the up front, the top 6 are completely decimated right now. But let us know down below what your thoughts are on all this. And again, thank you to Rentals.ca for sponsoring the video and supporting us and supporting you guys as well and Team Canada. Shout out to them. Thank you guys for watching. See you later.